What's up, everybody? It is February 14th, 2026, and today we're going to be diving in to the upcoming weather pattern to see what the weather has in store for us. Looking at our 2-meter temperature anomaly in Fahrenheit, there's a pretty cold brand of air down here in the southeast. It's not quite Arctic, but it's cold. And you'll see why. There is also, if you checked out my posts page, I've made some posts during the week. You might have seen that I've been yapping about a storm happening out west. And yes, there is seemingly to be a very big storm happening. So make sure to stick around to the end of the video. There's important info that you're not going to want to miss. So make sure to stick around till the end. We're going to do some pretty cool things. But looking at our 2-meter temperature anomaly in Fahrenheit, cold air southeast, we've got decently cold air out west. Salt Lake City, there's some green right here that could be cold. We've got warmer air generally in the plains. But as we scroll on, you can see it gets really cold out west here. Wow, it actually gets really cold here. We've got some Arctic air headed into Canada, potentially 27, 21 to 33 degrees below average at least. It could be more. While we have some warmer, potentially 27 to 35 degrees above average headed into the east. I'm used to saying west because normally the west has been super warm this winter and the east has been super cold. That's about to change, and you're going to see why in a second here. Look at all this Arctic air. It doesn't seem to be headed anywhere. We're just getting round after round after round of Arctic air. And as we reach the end of our run, yep, believe me, there's more Arctic air headed into the west coast, even the inland states of the west. It's west of the Rockies. It's going to be cold. It's going to be gnarly. It's going to be snowy. It's going to be stormy. Exactly what you want for a snowpack. Looking at our 2-meter temperature in Fahrenheit, the Arctic air that we saw down here, or not just Arctic, it's colder. You could be approaching 20 degrees, generally to the warmer temps. But as we scroll on, it approaches 60 degrees here, but then it cools down to a whopping 20 degrees. But then as we go to the end of our run here, this is where we start to see the Arctic air into the west, especially like this Arctic shot that we saw going into Montana. You could see potentially negative 20, negative 15, negative 20 degrees Fahrenheit, and this could be cold, so make sure to have a backup heating source. Do not go outside. You could get frostbite very quickly, and it could be dangerous. It definitely has that potential, especially since it's going to be continuous and doesn't seem to be headed anywhere. It gets very cold even in the low-lying areas like Spokane, Cannon Beach, Oregon. We've got Seattle. I'm sure it's going to get pretty cold in Seattle, approaching 20 degrees. Could get cold, especially here in the Northeast, Great Lakes regions, Upper Midwest, Great Plains, Ohio Valley. Could be pretty cold, especially in the Sierra Nevadas, higher elevations in the West is especially where I would be concerned. Especially in Montana, we saw some continuous shots of Arctic air. So be aware for that. Have a backup heating source, like I said. Could get cold. Looking at our 168-hour precipitation in inches, 168 hours is also the equivalent to 7 days, so it's 1 week. Looking at our west coast here, mainly California and parts of Cannon Beach here is going to be affected, but really the main shot is going to be the Sierra Nevadas and coast of San Francisco area right here. It could be approaching 6 to 10 inches. But if it was to be 12 to 24 inches, which is unlikely to be 24 inches, just saying. If it were to be within that 12, 20 inches, it would be in the Sierra Nevadas. While out east, it's not going to be very bad. If it was, it would be out over the coast here, but unless you're on a boat, that's unlikely. So not much to worry about as far as precipitation goes, but if you're in the Sierra Nevadas or coast of San Francisco area of California, it could get pretty bad. So I'm just going to put the word out there. This is valid on actually February 21st. But as we reach the end of our run here, it does say hello and what's up to Oregon and Washington. We've got some precipitation out east too, pretty heavy, but I would say the west is going to be generally favored with precipitation, a little bit more than the east. Looking at our 500 millibar height dam and anomaly M, you can see there's a very small trough of low pressure here down south, a decently strong trough of low pressure up here in the Pacific Northwest. But as we scroll on, there's a massive ridge of high pressure. This is probably the largest ridge of high pressure I've ever seen in my days of doing weather updates. This is actually huge. Luckily, we have this giant trough shielding us out west. Thank the Lord for that. From this from this ridge of high pressure. If it weren't for this trough, this ridge of high pressure would likely flow into the west coast. But luckily, we are just gonna get trough after trough out west. And as we reach the end of our run, this trough actually gets really big, affecting a vast majority. Almost half of the entire North American continent is going to be experiencing troughing. There's also a big trough here by Iceland, Greenland, parts of Canada, parts of Quebec, Canada, and very far northern parts of Canada. While not to mention the east is going to be having some ridging of high pressure, so potential snow melt is a possibility. Looking at our cumulative max 10-meter wind gust in miles per hour, there is not much on today, February the 14th of 2026. There's maybe 50 miles an hour gust for Houston, Texas. Not sure if that's 100%, but comment down below if you're in Houston watching this video and it's windy outside, because this is today. I don't know if it's at the time of recording, but it's on February 14th, that's for sure. But as we go to the end of our run, wow, it actually gets a lot more windy. There's still this 50-mile-an-hour gusts down here, Texas. The following states that I name are going to be experiencing high winds: Washington, Oregon, California. I would say maybe Las Vegas, Nevada. We've got Arizona, Utah, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming. It's going to be very windy up here in the northwestern areas. So let's look at Washington. It looks very windy there. Just saying, it does look very windy. Washington, here we go, where we are, there we are. Here we are, good old Washington, the Evergreen State. It is very windy up here by Bellingham. Gusts 89 miles an hour. I would say there is a very solid chance to see. I would not be surprised to see gusts up over 90 miles an hour in that Bellingham region. It could get very windy up by Mount Baker. East of the Cascades, though, it's very light. So I would assume that this is a mainly low-lying areas. At Seattle, it could be 60, 67, 71 mile an hour winds for Seattle. For Everett, Tacoma, Cannon Beach, Oregon, it could be 64 to 70 miles an hour. I wouldn't be surprised to see gusts up over 70 miles an hour here in Washington. It's definitely 70 here out over the coast, west of the Olympics. This is going to be very widespread, high winds, power outages, very widespread, very bad power outages may result. It could get windy. Do not go outside during the storm. Only go out in the aftermath. Be careful of trees. It could get very windy there. It doesn't look good for Washington. So if you live in Western Washington and you're watching this video, make sure to comment down below what you think of this, because I'm wanting to know people's opinions. And trust me, I read the comments. Looking at Oregon, I also see some action happening down there. Oregon. Here we are. Oregon, Cannon Beach, like I said when we looked at Washington, it got pretty windy there. If it's not as widespread as Washington, although east of the Cascades of Oregon, it does get maybe potentially approaching 70 miles an hour here. If it were to be more widespread, 70, 80, 90 mile an hour wind gusts, it would be in the Cannon Beach or coast of Oregon. Hold on, I gotta look at the whole U.S. first to see what states we have to visit. Fine, let's go to California. Actually, I can just cover that from here because it's such a big state. Sierra Nevadas is where most of the wind's going to be, although there are some isolated spots up here in Northern California. Looking at the Four Corners, U.S. regions. Let me see if I can find that. Four Corners. Actually, never mind. Hold on. Four Corners. I'm determined to find it. Four Corners. No, actually, they do not have the Four Corners, but that is okay. I will cover each state. Let's start with Wyoming. I see some action happening there. I remember because I visited Wyoming several times. It's at the very bottom of this giant list that I have right of my screenshot. Wyoming is right here. We've got some wind just crossing the border into Montana. Pretty widespread, but definitely less than what I believe to be the king of high wind right now is Washington. There is very widespread up over 70 mile an hour wind gusts. Definitely up over 60 and 50, that's for sure. It could get very windy here, potentially gusts up over 70 miles an hour in some isolated spots. It could be definitely more widespread, more likely 50 to 60 miles an hour, but there is always that potential for 60 or 70. Looking at Colorado, I think I saw something happening down there, so let's just go check it out. Here we are. Yes, there is a lot happening down here, actually. Southern Colorado here by Durango, I believe. It's Durango, I think. Potentially gusts up over 67 to 77 to maybe even 90 mile an hour winds are definitely likely. It could get very windy here. It's definitely a little bit more widespread here. This is New Mexico. This is the state border, not the country border. It could get very windy here. Potentially more widespread power outages may result. Do not go outside during the storm. It is very dangerous to do so. Trees are falling. Things are blowing around. Make sure you secure any loose objects. If you are watching to this part of the video, make sure you secure loose objects because they could become projectiles in such winds and blow through windows. Trust me, it happens every time there's a severe wind event. So please take my advice and secure loose objects. So yes, it could get very windy. I'm going to go back to the United States. The following states that I name are going to be experiencing very high winds. Ohio Valley, Great Lakes, there's also gusts up over 50 miles an hour. But mainly the states that I'm going to name right now are going to be the states experiencing up over 60. Washington, Oregon, California, Arizona, New Mexico, we've got Colorado, Utah, probably. Definitely Wyoming, Montana, definitely southern British Columbia, Vancouver, Canada. That is just probably it, although there is some very high winds easily over 100 miles an hour here. It might even be 108 or something like that. It could get very windy here, so please be careful of this. It could get bad, could be very windy. Don't go sailing during this. This is on March 1st, by the way. Dates up here. Whatever it is, if it's temperature, wind, trough, whatever it is, it's going to be down here. Looking at our visibility in miles, there is some pretty bad visibility conditions here happening out in Washington, Oregon, California, the Four Corners. We've got Rockies, we've got Gulf Coast, we've got Great Lakes region, we've got maybe Ontario, Canada, Quebec, Canada, tons of isolated spots that I can't name or this video would be hours long. Not to mention Miami, southern Florida. But as we scroll on, you can see it does get a lot less fog, and then it eventually kind of comes back on. You can see there's some kind of system here rolling across, but it doesn't seem to be the most severe of the fog. If it were to get down to 0.1 miles, it would happen on February 16th, right here in the Ohio Valley. But as we scroll on, you can see there's this system moving into California. Very isolated spots when we get down to those 0.1 miles. I don't think it's going to be very widespread, although it did get pretty widespread here. Most of Florida on February the 19th. But if it were to be very widespread, it would be in Florida. I could see I can totally anticipate some frequent visibility drops, especially right here on the 1st of March the 1st. Could get hazardous driving conditions for sure. Avoid driving unless absolutely necessary. If you do drive, I highly recommend fog lights. If you don't have fog lights, just drive carefully. Don't drive with your brights on because fog is water essentially in its vapored form. And water reflects light. So when your bright lights are on, it reflects back into your eyes and you can't see. So put on your dimmer lights. It helps a lot. Looking at our snow depth in inches, this is not quite the extended forecast just yet, but we'll get there if you stick around till the end, trust me. As of right now, there is tons of snow, easily 48 inches plus for the mountains out west, not to mention the northeastern states, so I'm talking Great Lakes region, northeastern states like Maine, not to mention Ontario and Quebec, Canada. We've got British Columbia, Canada is looking out on their snow for the Rockies and Cascades, Sierra Nevadas of the west. But as we scroll on, you can see it doesn't change much, although there are maybe some snow for the low-lying areas. Like I'm seeing some snow for Spokane, Seattle, Cannon Beach. We could see some snow building up in the Sierra Nevadas. We've got Montana also getting some snow. As we reach the end of our run, you can see there's definitely a little bit more. Sorry, I just bumped my mic. I don't know if you heard that or not, but if you did, that's what it was. Looking at our extended forecast. This is the extended European model. This is March 17th, 2026. There is tons of snow for the mountains out west, tons of snow for the northeast, and tons of snow for the Great Lakes regions with those snow effect machines turned on. As we max out the run here, it actually dissipates a little bit. But don't worry, because when we go to our 46th day, it all comes back on, and it's worth it. Very high snow totals here in the Northeast and Great Lakes, not to mention the mountains out west, like I've already said. Looking at our control model, it did update, because it used to look like this. I know, it's disgusting, unless you live here. But it updated to this. It's a little bit less for the Northeast, unless you live here in northern we've got parts of Minnesota, Michigan, not to mention the mountains out west. It could get very snowy there. If you plan on shoveling the snow, make sure you take breaks. I know I've mentioned this a lot, but it's true. It could get very, very snowy. It could be very dangerous. If you plan on shoveling the snow, which I don't really recommend it, use a snowblower instead. It's a lot safer. If you are going to use a snowblower, if you are going to use a snow shovel, then take breaks. Hospitals see people every year coming in with heart problems, heart attacks, and heart issues because they're shoveling too much snow and not taking breaks. So please take breaks, drink water, don't get frostbite, wear appropriate clothing. It could get very cold, and trust me. Looking at our pivotal weather, National Weather Service current hazards. This is live. So you can see in parts of what I believe to be is just east of Colorado. You could see some just north of Oklahoma. You could see there is actually some flood warnings in effect here. This kind of like blue stuff, I'm not sure if it's quite navy blue, but it's blue. It's that bluish stuff. That is a winter storm watch. For the Sierra Nevadas in Northern California. This gray stuff is fog advisory. This stuff is high wind watches. The lighter stuff, which I believe to be right here, is a wind advisory. These are high wind watches. Nothing out east, nothing east of Minnesota is going to see any hazards. Although there are some fog advisories here in Washington, kind of by Yakima, if I had to guess. Not to mention the fog advisories here. We've got wind watches in California, very far south in Texas. Looking at our CPC outlooks. This is the 6 to 10 day temperature probability outlook. Looks, everything east of the Rockies is above average. Everything west of the Rockies is much below average. As you can see, finally we're starting to get some below average temperatures. We need that for our snowpack out west. We've been favored with warmer air. We want cold air, guys. Let's say hashtag cold air in the comments below. I want to see that. As we look at our 8 to 14 day temperature probability outlook, you can see there's still below average temps, although it may be dissipating, but let's hope that doesn't happen. We are still seeing well below average. There could be some below averageness here in the Northeast, but it would be a lot less widespread than we see out west. Let's hope it stays that way. That is just about all the weather talk I have got for you today. Make sure to like and subscribe. Happy Valentine's Day if I haven't said so already. Hope you have a great Valentine's Day, and I will see you guys this afternoon. Goodbye.